From low vacancy rates to climbing home prices, housing is top of mind for many Ontarians. Last week, the provincial government unveiled plans to help boost supply in the province. Here to explain, Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the PC MPP for, wait for it, Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes. Longest name in the legislature.
Absolutely. Long name, amazing service.
It is great to have you here.
Thank you.
First time since I think you got appointed to cabinet. So
Absolutely, yes, that's right.
nice to have you in that chair.
Glad to be here.
Tell us what the mission is of the new so-called Housing Supply Action Plan.
Well, our vision for More Homes, More Choice, Ontario's Housing Supply Action Plan, is really to create more supply. We want to make sure that everyone has a place that they can call home at a price that they can afford. And that's the underlining policy that we took when we had consultations and ultimately tabled this bill last week.
How do you think it improves upon the situation you inherited?
Well, the one thing that really became evident is we're in a crisis situation. We've got vacancy rates, as you said right at the very start, that are at an all-time low. People just don't seem to be able to see a path for home ownership. And there are a number of regulations. People kept talking to me about the red tape that they have to face, the backlog that they've faced at tribunals and at planning meetings, and we really needed to do something to spur on housing supply. And we had extensive consultations. We made a number of announcements in the fall. We've signaled after this bill has been tabled, there are things that we are going to do in future. There's a lot of things that government can do to create an environment where housing supply is increased, and that's exactly what we've tried to do with this bill.
Because that's the gist of it, right? You're not actually in the home building business. You want to create conditions under which homes can be built.
Correct. Government are not home builders, but we can create a climate that creates the opportunities to build more homes more quickly.
Red tape. Give me an example of a regulation that was in there before that you thought, this is stupid, this is just inhibiting home construction, I'm getting rid of it.
Well, first of all, just the amount of time that it takes. You know, the example that I use is a building. In my building, it was the first file I opened as an MPP in March of 2010. It was an affordable seniors housing building, and literally, people just moved in 2 months ago. So it took almost 9 years to actually become a reality. Everyone agreed with it. It was not taken to a tribunal. It didn't go to LPAT or the OMB. It wasn't stuck in terms of a council framework. It just was the system that we've laid out for an affordable housing project, and took 9 years. That had to stop, and that's an example that I used at a number of roundtables, and people agreed. They had their own examples of just the normal planning process taking so long with literally little options for the development to take place.
Okay, help us understand this, because the Ontario Municipal Board was this sort of safety valve on City Council decisions. If you didn't like a decision that came out of Council, you could appeal it to the Ontario Municipal Board. That's hard to say. And it was kind of that way for about 90 years. Then the Liberals put a new process in place, the LPAT, Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. They put that process in place. And then, of course, they lost the election, and now you've put a new process in place. What's the difference between what you've done and what you inherited?
Well, I'd like to think that we took some of the good from the old process and good from some of the existing process to move forward. I know some of our critics are talking about that we've just reverted back to the old OMB. That's not true. But the fact of the matter is that there was about 100,000 units stuck at a tribunal, either the legacy cases before the OMB or over the last year, because it was a year in April that the LPAT was created. So nothing was getting done. Our initiative, More Homes, More Choice, makes a priority of trying to get rid of that log jam before a tribunal. We're appointing 11 new adjudicators, an increase of about 40%. We're working with Tribunals Ontario and the Attorney General's office to deal with some of the adjudicative powers that the LPAT has, that we'd like to try to get the backlog dealt with, either through mediation or for some other means. We also want to move to a more cost recovery model. So I'd like to think that we're taking some of the best of both systems and creating a new LPAT that really unlocks those 100,000 units. That's what it's all about. It's about creating those opportunities to build more homes for people.
What does a cost recovery model mean?
Well, some of the fees that were charged, it allows the LPAT to look at some of the fees that were typically charged and try to move to more cost recovery. So it would increase fees depending on what type of application it would be. It just, again, some sustainable measures that we put forward, but suffice it to say that the whole point is we need more housing built. And to have 100,000 units stuck at one of the two tribunals, yes, I'm creating a third tribunal, so to speak, to sort of deal with it. But I think that's what is the frustration. There was one case that I was shown as an example that it's been stuck at the tribunal for 7 years. And yes, it's probably the worst case scenario, but still 7 years before a tribunal system is totally unacceptable. Waiting 2 or 3 years for a hearing is unacceptable. And I think the powers that we're going to be working on to change, the big thing is providing those extra 11 adjudicators. So no one can say that we're going back to an old system. This is a brand new system that I think takes pieces from the OMB and the LPAT, and I think will improve the situation greatly.
Needless to say, politicians have the job of finding out, where the sweet spot is, where the balance is. You don't want to be too pro-development. You don't want to be too pro, not in my backyard. And obviously, a lot of your critics have come forward since you introduced this, saying that you've got the balance wrong. I'll read one of them from you. This is from Josh Matlow, who's a Toronto City Councillor, who said, the Doug Ford government has announced the return of OMB rules and a handover of the planning process to the development industry and their lobbyists, making life less affordable for residents and ensuring needed services and infrastructure won't keep up with the pace of growth. I'll just ask the question directly. Have you made it too easy for developers at the expense of residents?
Councillor Matlow's wrong, and I hope he would take advantage of a technical briefing that my staff could provide. We spent a lot of time listening to people on the ground, municipalities, people who build homes, advocates, organizations who have an interest. We want partners. We want partners, whether they be people that build homes, municipalities, the federal government, nonprofits, co-ops, anyone in the housing space that wants to create that opportunity, we'll work with them. And so to say that we're slanted towards one particular sector is absolutely wrong. And I think anyone who's actually looked at the bill, actually talked to our officials about some of the intent on why we're accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish through the bill, will realize that I think we've struck that balance. I truly believe we've got a balanced bill that measures all the interest, but does so in a collaborative way. When you go back and look at our consultations, we had 5 themes: cost, speed, mix, innovation, and rent. And we received over 2,000 submissions. 85% of them were from the public. So there was not one sector that dominated the consultation, not one sector dominated our roundtables that we had in ridings all across the province. So for our critics to say that we were slanted to people that build homes, that's not true. But you know what? People that build homes are a very important part of the system. They're there to help that young couple realize their dream of home ownership.
No, I hear you, but they're going even further than that, your critics. They're saying not only are you skewing this towards developers, but you're doing so because it's the developers, as opposed to neighborhood or residential groups, that make contributions to your political parties and your campaigns.
That's just not true. The process that we had for the Housing Supply Action Plan was one of the most collaborative processes. We ensured that every time we were given a good suggestion, we acted on it. Look at what I did a month ago with the Community Housing Renewal Plan. That was a very clear signal to people that affordable housing and housing to deal with our most vulnerable was a priority. I announced it first. I wanted to be able to work with those service managers, not-for-profits, co-ops to try to house some of our most vulnerable. And I took the approach that I wanted to leverage every single dollar in the system. The Housing Supply Action Plan is the same. We ensured that all 5 themes, there's something in there for everyone. And the guide that I, again, look at, the people that I want to speak to is that young couple that right now can't realize the dream of home ownership. I want them to realize their dream. To the senior that perhaps wants to downsize and have another opportunity in a different type of location or a different type of housing, has that option. The university student, the couple who live in a 700 square foot apartment with a couple of kids who want to have something better, maybe near a school or near transit. We want to make sure that the bill is balanced and provides that opportunity for everyone. And I challenge my critics. If they really want to sit down and talk about what's in this bill, I think we can show them how we're trying to have something for everyone.
Okay, here's the follow-up question, which is intensification seems to be the word of the day certainly in urban areas, as opposed to, people hate this word, or at least the development industry hates this word, but sprawl. Instead of sprawling out further, intensify the city already, the services are already in place, rather than, okay, so the question is, should you, in this day and age, given how expensive it is to put in sewer systems and water, all that stuff, all those services, should you still be able to buy an 8,000 square foot, 3-car garage home an hour north of here?
Well, the plan provides for a mix of housing. I'm not going to deny that. But uniform, anytime we were at an event, anytime we did a roundtable, it was unanimous. People want us to intensify around transit. People want that density increase to be around transit. Our plan provides that. It was certainly reflected in roundtables we had as part of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. It came up. You talked to some of our GTA MPPs. It came up at almost every one of their roundtables. If we're going to intensify and we're going to provide that higher density, it has to be around transit. And that's what we're going to act on.
Do you plan to allow more development in the greenbelt?
No, that's one thing I said at our announcement last Thursday, and I'll say again on your show. The Premier has been very clear. We are not going to develop in the greenbelt. We're going to protect it in its entirety. There are no policies that are in the More Homes, More Choice bill. There are no policies that are in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe that touch the greenbelt negatively in any way.
Well, you say the Premier's been clear, except he kind of hasn't been clear. During the campaign, he said he was open to it. He then changed his mind the next day, so you can understand that people may feel that maybe he's not sure on this.
No, he's been very clear, and I've been very clear that we are not going to develop in the greenbelt, full stop.
Okay. Where do we want to go next? Conservation authorities.
Yes.
How do you plan to streamline the role that they play in where houses ought to be allowed to be built?
Well, I've spoken to a number of conservation authorities about the permitting process, and I believe that in conversations with them, they want to be open for business. They want to be part of a more streamlined process, but at the same time ensuring that those environmental protections are there. The challenge that you have is conservation authorities can be quite different. In my riding, I have 3 of them. They operate completely differently. One, very much open for business, very much providing very strong environmental protections. We had our port expansion in Johnstown. They were actually able to work with the municipality to expand the port, but at the same time protect fish species. So they were able to do that. I've got another one, not so much. They've got away from that original flood protection mandate. So the sections in our bill that deal with conservation authorities, I think, try to provide transparency, openness, but at the same time, we need the priority on those protection type programs, the things like flood mitigation, and we want
It's kind of a good time to get that message through, don't you think? Look what's going on now, my goodness.
As minister who has had to activate a number of disaster recovery assistance for Ontarian programs, having a conservation authority deal with the priority of flood mitigation, especially through legislation like a housing supply action plan, is very important. I happen to think we can strike a balance, and this legislation does strike a balance between those environmental protections and having strong environmental protections, but at the same time having a strong economy. And I think you can have protections for floods and protections for conservation authorities, but at the same time have a system where you can get actual homes built for people that need them.
Okay. That's you as Minister of Housing. Now I want to ask you some questions as you, Minister of Municipal Affairs, okay?
Okay, sure, absolutely.
You were a mayor once upon a time.
I was a mayor and a CAO.
You were the mayor of Brockville.
Correct.
At what age?
22.
Were you,
22 years, 1 day.
were you the youngest mayor ever?
At the time, yeah. I'm sure I'm up there with. I'm older now.
Aren't we all? Here's the question, though. If the provincial government of the day, when you were the mayor of Brockville, after you had just passed your budget, had come to you and said, oh, incidentally, we're going to cut several $1 million of money that we used to give you for things like public health out of your budget, and you're going to like it and shut up about it, how would you have reacted?
When I was mayor, I was also president of AMO, and I dealt with a lot of different provincial governments. In fact, I'm one of the people who can say that in my 9 years as mayor, I dealt with all three parties who had the reins of power provincially, and I dealt with two parties federally over those same 9 years. So I've dealt with lots of different parties. I had things that I liked and things that I didn't like most mayors. You know, you're always advocating for your communities. And I expect that mayors and councillors will continue to advocate for those communities. We have a system in place with myself as minister, a very robust system of consultation, both with...
Not on this. Not on this one.
Well, I just want to say, and I'm not going to, I have a confidential process with AMO where we meet every month. I moved it back to every month. The previous government did every 2 months. We also have a confidential process at the staff level and the ministry level with the City of Toronto. The last thing I'm going to do, Steve, is break confidentiality on either the AMO MOU process or on the City of Toronto process. But I will tell you that prior to tabling legislation and prior to announcing changes in policy, we ensure that those things are discussed at that level. So we have a consultation process. Not to say that it can't be improved, and to go back to when I was mayor, we had a situation with the Peterson government where they froze unconditional grants, and we had I guess I was the ringleader in having a meeting of all the mayors. It resulted in a new provincial municipal consultation framework being negotiated. So I've told different mayors that have had a complaint about our consultation system. I'm open to hear their suggestions, but
it sounds like you're saying, though, Minister, it sounds like you're saying that you gave them a heads up that these cuts would be coming. And, you know, the guy who's the head of LUMCO, the mayor of Guelph, Large Urban Mayors Caucus of Ontario, the City of Toronto, they've all said you guys sprung these cuts on them, tens of millions of dollars, with no advance heads up at all. You saying that's not true?
I am not going to, again, I'm not going to betray a confidential process that we set up with them. LUMCO has a seat at the AMO MOU table, as does all organizations within the AMO umbrella. NOMA, FNOM, OSAM, they all have a seat at the table. We have monthly meetings where we talk about programs and policies and legislation prior to them being introduced. So the process is there. I think it's working well. If there's some suggestions to improve them, I'm all ears.
Okay, one last thing, and that is, you were the guy, I think, who had carriage of so-called Bill 5, the bill that cut Toronto City Council in half, basically.
I did.
So that was a hell of a storm at the time, I don't have to remind you, and, you know, threats of using the notwithstanding clause of the Constitution and so on. You know, here we are a year later. Was it all worth it? Do you think it's worked out?
I think it was a positive process. We didn't use the notwithstanding clause.
I know, threatened to.
Bill 5 was always set up to make council in Toronto more effective and more efficient.
Do you think it is?
Responsive to the needs. No, I think it's a lot better than it was prior to Bill 5. I think there are many critics who believe that we accomplished what we set out to do. It remains to be seen some of the other issues that I mentioned at that time, things like that we wanted to work together to build housing and to build transit and to fix infrastructure. The jury's still out on those three aspects, but I still remain very optimistic as Minister of Housing that we'll be able to work with the Mayor and the Council here in Toronto to build the right type of housing in the right place at a price that people can afford. And I know that that Minister McNaughton and the infrastructure file, and Minister Yurk, obviously with the upload, he has a bill before the legislature that I think is very important for the city's future. And we've got a premier, quite frankly, and I've said this many, many times around the Bill 5 debate, who loves the city. He loves the city of Toronto. He served here as a councillor. His brother was the mayor. He really wants to see the best for the city. So people can argue how we dealt with Bill 5 at the time, how we passed Bill 5. But now, looking since the October election, there are a number of people who think that we did the right thing, and I appreciate that.
That's Steve Clark. He's Ontario's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the PC member for Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands. And don't forget the Rideau Lakes.
Don't forget them.
Thanks a lot for coming into TVO tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.